We're going to dive into putting order in production orchestration, which obviously we heard all the comments about how this is a big need to have people coming together in a kumbaya kind of moment. So Jared, you're staying. Everyone else is class dismissed. But joining Jared will be Robert Erickson from Tag Video Systems. Obviously, the shift in virtualized hardware space necessitates a corresponding change in business approaches and partnerships. Digital transformation infrastructure is available only through collaborative efforts within the media community. Jared and Robert will discuss how to embrace this transformation and the future possibilities of joint DevOps partnerships to move faster and more aligned with emerging opportunities. So Jared and Robert, take it away.
Excellent. Welcome, Robert. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me out here today. Appreciate it.
We kind of picked this time because we thought this was really the logical extension of what the technology side of this, but more focused on what do we as a community need to do to enable, kind of unleash the orchestration capabilities that are available. I think that it's not just what we're building that's important. I would even argue that how we're building that and how we're working together as a community to build that is what's most important for us to meet that challenge today. What do you think?
Yeah, agreed. You know, we're seeing a shift in the industry. You know, we're going away from, your panel previously was talking about how we've traditionally had a hardware-centric or single vendor-centric model. And as the industry changes, as customers' workflows change, as everybody's requirements change, we're seeing those changes, that pace of change happen faster and faster and faster, to the point where you can't have one big company or two or three big companies produce solutions that are optimized for what the customers need. So we're finding this environment now where having companies, smaller, more reactive companies, that can build individual pieces of a workflow and then can be stitched together to create what our customers' workflows need, what their customers' workflows require. And that kind of flexibility from the vendor and also the flexibility of the company stitching them together is really becoming paramount recently.
I totally agree. I think more and more as Diversified, as we look into the future, we have to become a much more digital software-style integrator as opposed to a systems integrator. And the subtitle of this kind of first slide is about you can only automate what you digitize. And I can speak, you know, from looking out across the community of vendors and doing large-scale evaluations across the vendor community, that the bottleneck right now to especially the kinds of cloud adoptions and elasticity that we're looking to achieve is that there's the manual component that people haven't factored in. There's the person I have to call to get a license, right? There's the analog step that I have to actually stop what I could automate to get into a solution, put hands on keyboard and do the work because things aren't digitized. Can you talk a little bit about the transformation that TAG is going through from digitizing your processes and really making that payload of technology easy to automate?
So it comes into actually how you architect a product. If you're going to have a product that can be elastic, that can scale, that can go from, you know, if you want to do a job that's got 4 or 5 inputs, but you also, maybe the next job you're going to do is going to be 30, 40 inputs, or maybe 20,000 as some of our customers are doing. If you're going to have that flexibility and you're going to be able to automate that into any kind of modern environment, the product has to be architected for it. It has to be designed, first off, to use generic compute. But most importantly, and I think the orchestration of this is the harder part, is it has to be controlled via API, 100%. You can't spin up a piece of software and expect an operator or an integrator to sit there in front of a UI to configure every little nitbit of it for every single workflow you do. You know, the idea is to build a workflow solution that can change as quickly as the customer's requirements do it. And if you have to go in through a manual or a common UI, that's just not how it works. So you have to have a software solution that is architected to be able to be controlled via API, which I can say in the broadcast environment, almost nobody has a product that is 100% API controlled. Now, we happen to be one of them. I'm kind of grateful for that, but we're starting to see other vendors adopt to that. But having the ability to automate the software and have a third-party orchestration system is part of it. It takes the mentality. It takes that kind of community openness of saying, hey, as a software vendor, I know I'm going to have to work with other vendors. I'm going to have to work with other third-party orchestration systems. And it's having that openness and that commonality that we're working for our customer's goal. And that's key, and that has to be built into the ethos of the organization.
Yeah, I think what we have seen is that the ability to automate things up to the I have deployed the computer and infrastructure in the cloud that you need to do the job, right? Pretty easy. I think Amazon, Google, those companies have really made the tool sets very available. I think where we struggle currently is the holy grail that our clients are asking for is that ability to do simplification of the production to the point that the operator themselves, without the help of Kubernetes engineers, without the help of all the sophistication, can just go into a UI and say, I want to do this kind of show at this time, go. The problem that we're having right now is that so much of the software requires such manual care and feeding that you got to stop that process. You can take what used to be weeks and weeks of cloud infrastructure conditioning, and you can automate that today and boil that down into under an hour. But when you have to then stop that automation process to go through the exact same way of configuring that tool that we would have done if we were on premise 10 years ago, the whole value proposition is limited by those gaps.
Agreed. And just to kind of take it to a little extreme here, how many people here have TDs or audio operators that are totally cool standing up software instances and instantiations between shows? That's the reality of, sorry, I'd like to use the crowd as
more than I thought.
I'd like to use the crowd as an example on this one, but that's kind of what we're talking about here is how do you stitch together these workflows so the operators can sit down, do their job, do what you're paying them to do in the easiest way matter, but still use modern infrastructures, modern compute, modern orchestration systems, and so forth that the engineering requires, that the workflow requires, but still abstract that from the operators.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because just getting to the cloud doesn't stop the train of technology, right? This is just one stop on a continuous expedition of things that are moving forward. And what we've really found at Diversified is really changing the way we build software with our vendor community around orchestration is not operating like separate companies anymore. It's building I think it was Matt on the earlier panel that was talking about the need of relationships, and I think they're so important, and it's those relationships that we build where I'm sharing Jira environments with my vendor partners, we're working on bug reports together, we're connecting at the API level, not just in the technology we deploy, but the way that we deploy that technology.
Yeah, it's the other thing too is on the vendor side, at least from the software manufacturer, from our perspective, obviously we have to interact with you fantastically, but you're also saying, hey, the solution we're building is going to be these 6 or 7 different software manufacturers. And in the past, a vendor could be like, this is what we do. Take it as it is. Nowadays, this open collaborative environment between vendors working, of course, through Diversified, to be able to drive the solution is kind of the new mentality we have to have. It's no longer, this is what we do, this is how our product works, figure it out. It's not how it works anymore. It has to be open, it has to be collaborative. We have to be open to taking the ideas of other vendors. Obviously, you're driving the initiative from Diversified. And having just the open collaborative environment from the vendor side, from the integrator side to be able to deliver those workflows is what we have to do now. And that's new from the vendor perspective. That's something we haven't had to do before.
Yeah, I think the term have to is kind of critical because the thing that scares me from an industry perspective isn't really any single vendor kind of dominating or causing an event where other vendors would not be able to succeed. It's the 2 kids in their basement with a bunch of GPUs that don't know any better, that they just can't use Claude to build a switching service or to build a graphics service. And I think it used to be very specialized, it used to be very difficult. But now, if you're up for it, you could build a lot of these microservices in a weekend with the help of AI. And that's only going to get, I think, more advanced. And so if we as a community don't come together, and this is difficult in a space where our traditional standard bodies really aren't active, right? Is building out those relationships so that we can work together in that modern way to make sure that our proprietary softwares that we've been utilizing for a decade or more don't become features and open source NIMs on an NVIDIA platform in the next year.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective because once broadcast has always been, the previous panel was talking about how your hardware, you have FPGAs or things like this. It's insanely expensive to do anything when you have to make hardware. But once you become a pure software model, I like the point you talk about how a couple of people in their basement can put stuff together. You have to continuously race against being commoditized. what is a multi-viewer today made by a multi-million-dollar company with almost unlimited CPU, almost unlimited GPU, and almost unlimited memory can be written pretty quickly by almost anybody. So having to continually listen to our customers, having to continually listen to what the market needs and be able to evolve that software is becoming not just a necessity for a revenue model, but a necessity for an existence model, because we will see a rapid commoditization of our infrastructure.
I totally agree, and I think it's that challenge that I would make to the audience, that the partnerships that we've built up to this point have gotten us very far, but they won't take us into the next epoch of what we have to do if we don't start operating as joint teams, developing software together, not just to get to a project and finish the project, but what we see now more and more, and I'd love to see if this is something that you're seeing even outside of your work with Diversified, is that it used to be I would, design a system for what we were going to need for the next 10 years, and you would build that to be the worst case thing that you're going to do on the Super Bowl, and that was your kind of high watermark. Now what we're seeing is the moment that we finish and wrap up a job, it's the next thing that client needs to add, and the next thing. So these days of, hey, we're gonna work on a project and then we'll see you again in 10 years, I think are gone.
No, agree. Because again, this comes back down to what the customer's needs are. It used to be, I'm going to build a studio. This set of requirements, this show I'm doing is fixed. We're going to set this for 3, 5, 7 years, and that's it. Nowadays, we're seeing a studio. You want to be able to utilize your assets more. You want to be able to get more out of the assets you purchase. So you want to see a higher utilization rate. And because you want to utilize it more, you're going to do more types of shows with different types of media. You're going to go from a sports set to a standing talking show to a news show, back to a sports set, that kind of stuff. So as you're changing these and so forth, your infrastructure has to become dynamic. So it's no longer, I'm going to build it. It's going to be built for 7 years, and 7 years later, Diversified is going to come back and build it again. Now it's, we're going to design it for this workflow, and a couple months later, we're going to add some more features and functionality to support a different workflow, and it becomes almost like a DevOps model, but for workflows.
Yeah, I think we're seeing exactly the same thing and happening at a more rapid pace, even between those points, where I think probably this year or last year, the most striking thing that I was a part of is a large news network organization that we were working with conducted a study. And the study was to see really how they can get more eyeballs from the younger generation. And what they found was a curve that the more money they spent on news, making it higher and higher production grade, the more skeptical the younger viewer was of that newscast. Which, it starts to really break what we think is our value proposition of doing the biggest, the baddest, the greatest looking stuff. You got to be able to adjust, and we have to be able to adjust in a way that I can provide that really high grade newscast for those people that want to consume it that way, or I can create a derivative that allows that to be more, here's how the sausage is made in the newsroom with an iPhone. And it's that level of being able to experiment that's really going to let our clients meet the mark, because what it used to mean to create broadcast is now moving to unicast and contextualization, and if we don't have the tool sets and the partnerships to keep up, others are going to fill that void.
I like the part you said about experimentation. Traditionally broadcast has been, I'm going to spend $10 million on the studio, this is what my product's going to be, and this is my amortization over the next 7 years. In order to experiment with new programming, you have to have an infrastructure that can also be spun up and spun down along with it. I want to spin something up. I want to try this. I'm going to try this for a week. I'm going to try this for a month. Does the commercial model work? If the commercial model works, great, extend it out. If the commercial model doesn't work, great, shut it down, move on, try something else. That experimentation is something new because traditionally we haven't been able to do it. We haven't been able to design an infrastructure for it. Now, with some of what Diversified is offering allows that level of risk and that allows that level of experimentation we've never been able to do before.
Yep, Robert, I think we're at the end of our time. I would just say to the group, we're in, I believe, a bit of a renaissance, a brand new world with opportunities I don't think we've ever had before. But in order for us to seize those opportunities, we have to challenge ourselves to think differently, because on the edge of these challenges are AI challenges that are going to completely disrupt. So being able to make sure that we're building a community together that is rapidly experimenting, that is using digital tools, and that is enabling that automation for that experimentation is critical. So appreciate you, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Jared, Robert, thanks for that.